Hi everyone, welcome back to another episode of Ingrid's World. I'm Ingrid Paris-Hicklin, your host. On this show, meet Dr. Stephanie E. Meyers. She is the author of The Invisible Queen, a book that tells the story of Queen Sophia Charlotte, the first British royalty with Moorish African heritage. Queen Charlotte was married to King George III and served as Queen of England and Ireland. Dr. Meyers is Vice President of R.J. Meyers Publishing and Counseling, company that provides research, book publishing, and webcasting to entrepreneurs, governments, as well as colleges and universities. In addition, Dr. Meyers is a scriptwriter and film producer. Dr. Phyllis Pajardo, since August of 2017, has been superintendent of Fairfax City Public Schools. Dr. Pajardo began as an elementary school teacher in 1981 and has held numerous leadership positions throughout Fairfax Public Schools in her 34 years career. She has been a teacher, assistant principal, assistant superintendent, just to name a few of the leadership positions she has held. Currently, she is adjunct faculty member for George Mason University, University of Virginia, as well as Virginia Tech. So let's now meet our fascinating guests. Let's meet Dr. Stephanie E. Meyers. Dr. Meyers, thank you so much for being here.
Oh, well, thank you, Ingrid, and thank you for the invitation to be on your wonderful show.
Well, I got excited about you being on the show. Well, first of all, tell us a little bit about yourself.
Well, I'm a Californian.
No.
Yes, and I moved to Washington. It's been over 30 years ago. And I'm kind of bi-coastal, have family out west, family back east. So I really kind of have had a career that spanned both having my own business and also working in the federal government for a number of years.
Beautiful.
So I see both sides of the street.
So that's really fascinating. So when you were putting together this book, first of all, what inspired you to do this?
Well, I have always loved Black history. I've always loved the idea that there's so many characters that have made contributions to the world that we don't know about. And so when I happened to run across this picture of Queen Sophia Charlotte on the internet one evening, I was doing something else, surfing the web like
Seriously?
we all do, and I ran across this picture and it said, Black Queen of England. And I'm like, huh? How could I not know this?
Yeah.
So I started to research it. And then when I learned about Queen Sophia Charlotte, and just about her personality, the contributions that she made, my husband, who is our publisher, said, we got to do a book. And so there we are.
That's how you did that.
Absolutely. It really wasn't a planned effort. It was really kind of bumped into her story, but thought it was really significant, and it is significant.
And it is significant. So tell us a little bit about Queen Charlotte.
Well, Queen Charlotte was born in an area called Mecklenburg-Strelitz, Germany. And she was a child of an intact family. Her mom was a mixed-race woman and had inherited this Moorish heritage through her matrilineal line, her mom's family. But Queen Charlotte, when she was a little girl, she lived in Germany, and she loved going to school. She learned how to speak 4 languages. She learned how to play instruments, and she even wrote a letter to this very famous man called Frederick the Great, because he was waging war from Austria in parts of Germany. And at the age of 14, she had the nerve to write a letter to the president, Frederick the Great, and tell him, I don't think you should do this war. You're hurting people in my area, and I think you should stop it. So she was strong, and she had feelings, and she expressed herself. And I think it's so good for our young people to know how that they can sit down and write a letter too, to someone who's in charge, the president or the principal of the school. So she was a young woman who became known throughout Europe. And when King George III was in his early 20s, they wanted to find a wife for him. So his mother, who was named the Dowager Augusta, she asked her court officials to go around and see what they could find. So they looked around Europe, they checked into the royal families and the noble families, and guess whose name came to the top?
Oh my
Queen
goodness.
Sophia Charlotte. And it wasn't because she was
Sophia
mixed race. It was because she was an intelligent young woman who was accomplished, who had been to school, and they felt that George was going to need a partner to be able to reign over Britain as he did need. He needed a strong, smart woman, and that's who she was. So they literally recruited her.
Wow.
And at the age of 17, she came to England, and what was very sad, Ingrid, is her mom died just before she left Germany.
Oh my goodness.
And so right after burying her mom, she got on a carriage wagon and then caught a boat and yachts. They sent 4 yachts from England to escort her to come.
Wow.
And she had to do that on the heels of losing her mom.
Wow.
But she did it, and she came to England and she married King George III.
You know, and that's really very powerful. When I also was communicating back and forth with you, what was going on in America that, did you have any impact with her?
Absolutely. We're talking the time of the slave trade.
Yes.
The slave trade, now we're looking at 1760s into the 1820s is the time when she was queen, after King George got coronated. So here you have a woman who's Queen of England at the same time she learns about all the slavery going on, and England was a big part of the slave trade, as we know.
Wow.
England was like leader along with Portugal and Spain. So Queen Charlotte became an abolitionist, and she developed close relationships with people like Granville Sharp, William Wilberforce, an African named Oladu Equiano, and she, behind the scenes, advocated against slavery. They had a movement called the anti-saccharin movement, and that meant that it was anti-sugar. Well, Charlotte found out that the sugar plantations were a big reason why black people, Africans, were literally being kidnapped in Africa, sold into chattel slavery, brought to the colonies in the West Indies, right here in Virginia, North Carolina, South Carolina, slavery all through the South. So she decided to be a part of the anti-saccharin movement, and she fought against the sugar plantations. And slavery was outlawed in England during the time that they were on the throne in 1808. Now, it didn't happen in America for another 50 years, but it did happen in England. And so I believe that Charlotte made a tremendous contribution by not being afraid to be herself and to speak out. Because you realize she could have hidden, she could have just had parties, but she's like our girl Megan. She said she's going to be who she is, and she's going to stand for something.
You know, that's why I got so excited. I was so relieved when I found your book, and I was like, oh my goodness, I got to get her on the show. But it was like, just like Megan and Queen Charlotte.
Well, yes, Megan's another mixed race girl, half black, half white, and she's comfortable in her own skin.
Yes.
And so Megan has her wedding on the day of Queen Charlotte's birthday.
No,
May 19th.
That was her.
It was the Queen's birthday that Meghan Markle and Prince Harry got married, but that's not all. They got married at St. George's Chapel, which is where Queen Charlotte is buried, and King George.
I'm getting chills.
Okay.
I'm getting chills.
And what are the names of Prince William and Kate's children? George and Charlotte. Those are the children of Prince William and Kate Middleton.
Yes.
So there are all of these interesting connections. And so we know that Queen Charlotte's legacy goes a long way. Prince Harry is 7 generations down her line. And I just believe that her public spirit attitude, aside from her mixed race heritage, she was also a civic. And I know you're very civically involved, and people you have on your show are public service. She helped start the first maternity ward for poor women in the hospital there in England. In England, the women had to have their babies in very cold basements that were very damp, and the infant mortality rate was very high. Queen Charlotte helped establish the first maternal hospital for poor women. Another thing she did was there was an orphanage in England that she learned about called the Wright School for Girls. Well, during these days in the 1760s and 1780s, there was no welfare. There were no food stamps.
There was nothing.
So Queen Charlotte invested in this orphanage, and helped these girls grow up. She brought them to the palaces and let them make curtains and bedspreads. So she taught them vocational skills so they could make a living. So she had a public service side to her because
Yes.
she was religious, she believed in the church, and she was educated, and she had all of these wonderful traits.
And you know what? And although hundreds of years later, those are still very important characteristics that a person should have, helping people and looking for ways to aid our community to make it better.
Absolutely. And I think we have great role models that we can look to. President Obama, Michelle Obama did a great job of showing that you can lead and you can care. And I believe Meghan and Prince Harry are going to do that. And I know that Queen Charlotte, that was what she stood for. She was involved in the smallpox vaccine. Now, during this time of Europe, you had just tens of thousands, if not hundreds of thousands of people dying from smallpox. Well, she and the king met a young man who had learned about the smallpox vaccine, and she vaccinated 13 of her 15 children. And don't let me forget to say, Queen Charlotte had 15 children.
Oh my
15
word.
children.
15 children.
And 13 of them lived to adulthood. And she vaccinated all of her children. Now, unfortunately, 2 of them did die in infancy, but the other 13 made it.
Wow.
The other 13 made it. And just another coincidental fact about her children, one of her sons, Frederick Augustus, was the first Duke of Sussex. And the Queen just appointed Harry and Meghan to be the Duke and Duchess of Sussex. That is named after Queen Charlotte's son.
Who knew that you would do this research? You were on the internet and you found this, and then I guess it just got you excited, and then you started doing more and more research. How long did it take you to write this book?
It took about 3 years.
Yeah,
it took
I would
about
imagine.
3 years because we wanted to show the different sides of her. She discovered Mozart.
I saw that.
Yes.
I couldn't get over that.
He was 8 years old, and he came to the palace to play, and she supported him. She also supported another black composer named George Bridgetower, and he was very well known during those eras. So she was really very involved and engaged, and back to being an abolitionist. That's the part of her that I fell in love with, because we know that Charlottesville, Virginia, and Charlotte, North Carolina were named for this woman. And Charlotte was really the last queen of the colonies. We don't realize that before the Revolutionary War, with George Washington and Thomas Jefferson and the Patriots and the Revolutionary War, England ruled America, the colonies. She was the queen. So the last legitimate queen of the colonies here was her. And during the Revolutionary War, they tried to recruit blacks from the plantations, and many of them did leave because they showed them her picture.
Well, what a privilege having you on the show. A pleasure first meeting you at an event. Saw you at Congressional Black Caucus again.
Absolutely.
And then I'm sure our viewers are going to get excited. How can they find your book?
Well, they can go online
Okay.
to MyersPublishing.com.
Wonderful. Thank you so much for being on the show, Dr. Meyers. You're wonderful. Continued success and spreading this wonderful word.
Well, thank you. Thank you.
Coming up next, we'll be talking with the superintendent of the City of Fairfax Schools. So stay right there. We'll be right back. Well, welcome to the show, Dr. Phyllis Pajardo.
Oh, thank
Great
you.
to have you.
Thank you so much for having me.
Well, I always like to start off. I told our viewers a little bit about you, but tell us from your perspective.
All righty. So I'll take the since this is about my work as a superintendent. I am starting my 38th year as a public educator. I have taught at the elementary level. I've been an administrator at the elementary school level as an assistant principal or principal. I've worked in central office, in professional development, staff development. I've also worked in human resources and career development.
Wow.
And leadership development programs. And for 10 years in Fairfax County Schools, I served as an assistant superintendent.
Wow.
So at the executive level, supporting our superintendent by overseeing schools as well as overseeing the Department of Human Resources.
Oh my word.
And a year ago, almost a year ago, in August of 2017, I became the superintendent in the city of Fairfax Schools.
Wow.
And so just as I thought, I was going to go off and retire, there was an opportunity, and so that has been my professional career.
How wonderful. When I was looking at different things from the public schools, and I saw innovation.
Yes.
So how does that translate in the school system?
So I think there are several ways. One for each and every student that's in the city of Fairfax, no different than I think for students across the country, nation, and internationally. It is our responsibility to ignite an interest in learning and to have kids understand, different than perhaps when you and I were in school, that there is only one right answer. There are multiple right answers, okay? And there are different ways and different paths to get to an answer. And actually, I don't even think we should call it an answer. There are different ways to solve problems, and that really takes innovation. So for kids to be creative thinkers, flexible thinkers, that they persevere, because if you are an innovator, you just don't do something one time and then pack it up and go home if it doesn't work well.
Exactly.
You make a better mousetrap, or you make a better computer program, or you think about what is missing, how could I automate something.
Right.
So really, but I think that starts with igniting passion in students first, and then getting them to know that it's okay to think very differently. And that really takes the form of staff being willing, teachers being willing to have activities and experiences that don't just have one direct answer, okay? And as I said, letting kids try, and letting kids, I'm going to use the word fail, because perseverance, it takes perseverance for I think any of us to really continue in our work.
And it sounds like what you have is resiliency. You're giving
Absolutely.
them like, okay, yes, I failed, but I can pick myself back up and
Agreed.
I can retool.
You got it.
Yeah, that's amazing. Tell me about the life of a superintendent.
There is probably not enough time in this show to talk about the life of a superintendent. I will say that never the same place twice. I know there's a motto in a store that's like never the same place twice, but I feel like my days are never the same day. Part of it is because the work of a superintendent is people work.
Yes.
And as you meet people and as you hear of their experiences, their hopes, their dreams, their setbacks, sometimes their judgments, that you see things differently.
Yes.
And so whether it's an academic opportunity, because I don't like to say challenge, it's an opportunity.
It's an opportunity.
Okay,
Beautiful.
whether it is a parent who thinks that we could have done something differently, whether it's a staff member who feels like they are not being able to do as much as they want to do, encountering people and taking them wherever they are makes my job different. And so certainly there are the things around instruction, what is Virginia requiring us to teach?
Yes,
there is assessment, again, no different than any other district around the country. But the heart of a superintendent's work is working with people. I would be remiss if I did not talk about the elected officials, the bosses of, my bosses who are our school board. They are elected through their constituent base. They are interfacing with the community. They come and share ideas with me.
Wow.
People have said something about this. What about this program? What about this practice? And it takes investigating.
Wow.
And certainly there is the financial part of it, because as a public school superintendent, this work cannot happen without the public actually making significant funding decisions to fund education in a way that kids are able to get what they need.
What I also love about you, you hand out a business card that is truly accessible. And that speaks so much about you as a superintendent, that you're accessible, you're not there up on high, but you are really a hands-on.
I'm here to serve the public.
Wow.
I had the great fortune of having great educators in my life as a student, who encouraged my parents to have me think about things differently. And that same service, I still feel it is important for me to embody even at my level. And so to see folks in the shopping center, in the grocery store, and hey, are you a student at so-and-so? They see their t-shirts, and to say, hi, I'm Phyllis Pajardo, the superintendent, and then to talk about, what's going well in their schools, and to hear about what they aren't necessarily happy about or would want to see change, but it's about service.
So one of the questions I wanted to know is that, from your perspective, what is one of the biggest challenges our community is facing?
So I will answer that, and I think it's not different than schools across the country. And this is about schools. For me, it's safety. Okay, safety and security.
Yes.
In order for students to be creative thinkers,
yes,
innovators, in order for staff to have opportunities for students to, in fact, give them the permission to do things differently, they have to be able to work and go to school in an environment that they feel is safe.
Yes.
And right now across the country, thank goodness, there are not things that are happening directly in the city of Fairfax or in our immediate surroundings. We have had some threats, some social media threats. There have certainly been things that we are looking at that have happened across the nation, but I know that we have to think about, is our building safe? And how so? Okay, once people come into the building, can they continue to feel safe?
Yes.
We have school security officers at our middle school and our high school, and talking with parents and a few students. They did ask me, what about the possibility of having a security officer actually in our elementary schools? And so, Ingrid, I do think that safety is an important piece, and I say that because that's foundational to kids really being able to learn and thrive in our schools.
So on another thing that I noticed, the high graduation rate.
Yes.
I have to tell our viewers, if you get a chance, go on your website and check out that graduation. What is that graduation rate?
So our graduation rate at Fairfax High School, I want to think, is about 98%. Now. It is, we're very, very pleased. That does not happen singularly. It takes a village, as the old African proverb says. It's because of supportive families, because staff who won't give up on students.
But you see that because when you see 98, I mean, because we all know that there's always going to be some or a lot who, for a lot of different reasons.
Right, absolutely. And the piece about the graduation rate, while that's still high, and some people I say, well, you're missing 2%. What we have found is because let me backtrack. There is on-time graduation, which says within 4 years, a student has finished and matriculated through the high school experience. Of the 2% that aren't graduating on time, students go to summer school, they take online classes, and so they graduate.
So they graduate.
Right, exactly. And so, but what you've just done is made me think about getting the statistics, on what happens for the additional students that may miss the 4-year mark, but that who go on to finish within 5 years.
Well,
or 6.
Graduating from high school is critical, and I can remember a long time ago that when my my oldest son had graduated from high school, and they were like, and I gave this huge party, you know, and it was tent, it was da 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 da. And one of my neighbors said to me, "Why are you doing this? Because it's just high school." And I said, "Excuse me, if you don't graduate from high school, all doors are closed. This is the first door you have to walk through."
Absolutely, absolutely.
So I have to commend you for making, you know, for all those parents that you are getting that door open so they can walk through there. That's
absolutely.
Like powerful.
Well, and I'm pleased to also say that our students, as they graduate, certainly many matriculate to 4-year universities.
I noticed that also.
And
that's
colleges.
there too.
I was just celebrating them, whether they go into the military, because we have students that go into the military who go into different, West Point and the Naval Academy, et cetera. Then we actually graduate students who have certifications in certain trades.
Oh my word.
And so, because one of my schools, Fairfax High School, my one high school, Fairfax High School, has within it an academy, and in that academy we have fashion design and marketing.
What?
We have students who are interested in television and production, and they take courses in that. We have students who take advanced languages, up to 7 different languages. And so for some of those students, they are finishing with an industry certification, and they couple that with maybe a 2-year associate degree, and they are on their way.
Oh my word.
You know, so right away going into